Hi, good evening, everyone. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Melissa Harrigan. I'm one of the counselors here in Ward 1, and I was asked by the mayor to do the welcome this evening. Mayor Caniff is unable to be here in person, but he is joining in remotely online. So hi, Mayor Caniff, welcome. I would like to thank every one of you for coming today and also thank the people who are watching online. This has been a follow-up meeting that has been requested for a number of months. And I do want to just recognize that and share with the community that the scheduling of this meeting was done in such a way that we would have meaningful updates for community members and be able to answer your questions rather than having a meeting where the response is, we'll get back to you or we don't know that yet. So we hope that today provides you with meaningful information and we're able to answer all of your questions. I'm going to introduce a number of people who are here today. Thank everybody for coming who is here at the table and also online. First, I would like to thank Councillor Mark Oche for coming. Just give a wave when I say your name, please. So thanks, Mark, for being here. I'd like to introduce Nancy McDonald Duncan. She is the Director of Investigations with the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office. Sean McFarland is here from Golder and Associates. Jennifer Barton is here as the Assistant Deputy Minister with the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. Ryan Brown is here, is the Director and Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Engineering Services with the Municipality of Chatham-Kent. Chris Case is here. He is the Fire Chief with the Municipality of Chatham-Kent. April Reedike is here, the General Manager of Community Human Services. Bruce McAllister, to my left, the General Manager of Community Development. And Jim Hogan is here, the CAO of Integris Services. And Tim Sunderland is joining us online as the General Manager of the PUC with the municipality. I'd also like to extend a warm welcome to our new CAO, Michael Dubin. Michael has been in the CAO role for just a couple of days. So Michael, as the council member, I'd like to say you get a free pass on the questions tonight. But also with us is Don Shropshire, who is our exiting CAO with the municipality. And I will pass it over to Don to facilitate the discussion tonight.
Thank you very much, Councillor Harrigan. How's the sound back there? Great, thank you. Also extend my welcome, and the process for this evening is to give you an update on the agenda. We're going to start off with an update from Nancy McDonald Duncan, and she's going to provide a high-level summary of the results of the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office investigation. For that. Better? I'm not.
Okay. Nancy's going to provide an update for the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office and the investigation. Then I'll be passing it over to Jennifer Barton. Jennifer's been to Wheatley many times over the course of the last year. She's been a Saltworth champion for us on the provincial front. Jennifer's going to provide an update and some opening remarks with respect to the provincial government's response to this event, and then hand it over to Sean McFarland, the senior staff person from Golder and Associates, who has undertaken the investigations of mapping where the gas came from and recommendations with respect to what we can do to mitigate the situation so we reduce any likelihood of a future event. At the conclusion of that discussion, the municipal staff that are present that have already been introduced to you will be walking you through the transition plans, what's going to happen over the course of the next couple of weeks or a couple of months as we complete all of the work on site in terms of capping the third and final well and so on. So we'll go through that in some detail so you know what to expect. Then I'm going to talk to you about some ongoing communication. As this is a transition point, we want to make sure that we consult with the community to make sure that your needs for ongoing updates and communications does not stop. We still have people that are out of their homes and their businesses, and we want to recognize that there's still an ongoing need for information or communicating to the community in both directions, for you to be able to ask questions and for us to provide regular updates. And then following that, we will be doing a question and answer. We've received many questions from the community in advance of this meeting. We've tried to address those up front. We'll review the questions that have been received to date. And then, as Amy has suggested, we'll be opening up the floor to any additional questions, and we'll be here to answer any questions that you have this evening to make sure that anything we have in the way of information we're able to share with you. So again, thank you for coming. And with that, I will turn over the floor to Nancy and ask her to provide her update. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, and good evening, everyone. On August 26, 2021, the Office of the Fire Marshal attended 15 Erie Street North in the community of Wheatley to conduct a cause and origin investigation as a result of an explosion. Okay. All right. On August 26, 2021, the Office of the Fire Marshal attended 15 Erie Street North in the community of Wheatley to conduct a cause and origin investigation as a result of an explosion. A team of investigators, forensic engineers, and members of our emergency preparedness unit have examined the scene, collected evidence, and have reviewed probable causes to understand the circumstances of the explosion. And our investigation is now complete. We concluded that the explosion was a result of methane hydrogen sulfide gas, H2S, entering through one or all of 3 floor drains within the basement. This gas was within explosive limits and was ignited by a competent ignition source within the basement. These findings conclude the mandated investigation required by the OFM pursuant to the Fire Protection and Prevention Act. The OFM would like to acknowledge the excellent work of all the first responders who were on site last August. While many people were injured, we're thankful there were no fatal injuries that day, and I would like to acknowledge the decisiveness of Chatham-Kent Fire Department to evacuate the buildings when they did. It could have been a much different outcome for residents otherwise. We'd also like to thank all of our partners, the Municipality of Chatham-Kent, Chief Case, and the members of the Chatham-Kent Fire and Emergency Services, Chatham-Kent Police Services, Windsor Fire and Rescue Services, Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training and Skills Development, Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks, and the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry. This was a comprehensive investigation to ensure we arrived at the most definitive cause, origin, and circumstance of the explosion. Our investigators took the time necessary to determine what occurred in Wheatley, and we'd like to thank all of you for your patience as we carried out and completed this investigation. Thank you.
All right, now that you've heard from my colleagues at the Fire Marshal's office, I do want to provide you with a few more details on what else we've learned through the investigation. So let me start off by saying I'm really pleased to be back here in Wheatley tonight and to be able to share an update with you on the investigation, mitigation, and next steps. I also want to acknowledge and thank all the members of this community for your patience and your collaboration. I know this has taken much longer than we would all have hoped, but this has been extremely important work to work through the investigation and all the associated details. It's not been a quick and simple fix, and I understand that many of you have been directly and indirectly impacted by the event that occurred in the summer of 2021, and many of you continue to still be impacted today. The community does continue to demonstrate compassion, generosity, and strength by going above and beyond to support those directly impacted by the situation. While I'm acutely aware of the challenges faced by the evacuated residents and businesses, I'm always inspired by the sense of community that I've seen here and learned about and heard about and actually saw with my own eyes over the past year. As you know, the location of the explosion in the downtown core of Wheatley has made response efforts complex. Working through an investigation in an area that's fully paved over with many different buildings on top in the downtown core has required a safe and methodical approach, but substantial progress has been made, and we're going to be able to share some of that with you tonight. The province and the provincial government remains committed to supporting the municipality in getting displaced residents back home and businesses back to work as quickly and as safely as possible. And I'm glad to be here today in lockstep with my colleagues across various provincial ministries. We've got a number of folks on the line and some here in the room. The Municipality of Chatham-Kent and our external consultants who have been and continue to work hard to understand and resolve the situation. Balancing the sense of urgency to find solutions while doing so in a safe manner and a scientifically sound manner that supports a long-term solution, which is what we all want. Today, you're going to have the opportunity to hear directly from our external consultant who has led us through the investigation. Sean McFarlane from Golder and Associates will walk us through the progress and findings of the investigation and a summary of the next steps. The ministry and our external consultants are also here to continue to listen to your concerns and to do our best to respond to any questions you may have as they relate to the investigation and any clarity that we can provide associated with that work. I do, as Nancy did as well, I want to extend my thanks to everybody supporting the investigation, especially those impacted residents, as I mentioned earlier, and the businesses in this community, but also the large group of people who have been working tirelessly on the site as well as behind the scenes to get us to the point we're at today. There has been a large group. I know many of you have seen people in town, many of the crews working on the site, the fire department, all your public service workers from the municipality, and a huge team supporting behind the scenes that you don't get the opportunity to see as well. I know there's some common questions that many of you would like answers to, such as the source of the gas that led to the explosion. How can we be sure that the site is safe? How much longer the investigation and mitigation will take? And as I said, we've been working really closely with Sean here from Golder and Associates, and we're going to go through those and answer many of those questions as we go through his presentation tonight. But happy to answer any questions later on as well if we don't address some of the specific concerns. So I'm going to stop there. I'm going to turn it right over to Sean from Golder to walk us through this information in more detail.
Thanks, Jennifer. So I'd like to walk through the Wheatley's pathways analysis with you today. And the last time I spoke with you on the town hall, I was still in the process of locating the sources of gas, conducting the pathways analysis, and let you know that we were aiming for a permanent solution. And I have some positive news for you in that regard, as I'll discuss as we walk through the investigation tonight. Next slide. So as an overview, we were retained to conduct a pathways analysis following the explosion. Our objective was to identify the source of the emission and the potential pathways to where the gas emission actually occurred. We are also recommended monitoring and mitigation options for safety based on the results of the pathways analysis. And all through the program, we were focused on health and safety. And we had full-time air monitoring, 24/7 air monitoring on site all throughout the investigation. We're working in conjunction with CK Fire on that. Next, please. So I'd like to just talk about the high-level areas, which are areas of potential environmental concern. There's APEX, the APEC 1, the area explosion. APEC 2, an area of an abandoned gas well in the municipal parking lot. And APEC 3, it was an area in the northwest of the municipal parking lot where a vent was reported, and also it showed an old water well on a sketch. Next. So here you can see, sorry for the, I'm not sure if you can see it all, but I'll point it out. This is the area here where APEC 1 is. That's the Pogue property. That's the Wheatley Hotel property. That's APEC 2, which is referred to as the Tate well. It's an old abandoned gas well drilled in 1897, abandoned in 1965 previously. And up here is APEC 3 up in the northwest corner of the parking lot. Next slide. So when we came on the property, we were searching for these APECs and the wells, and we conducted surface geophysical surveys. Thomas Kelly sent out some information on that earlier on. We conducted an EM61 survey and a ground penetrating radar survey. We were able to locate the Tate well in the municipal parking lot, particularly through the GPR, which showed the old depression that was infilled in the well crib. Next, please. We then conducted soil vapor survey analysis, which is basically drilling some holes, putting some monitoring wells in, and then taking gas readings to see if we have areas with elevated gas levels or if we're getting just background levels. So we put 4 shallow vapor survey probes in behind the Pogue restaurant and also MJ's Pizza, and one of those was through the Wheatley Hotel slab. Of these 4 shallow vapor probes, we detected very high levels in the probe that was under the Wheatley slab. But we didn't really find anything else out behind the Pogue or behind MJ's Pizza or out behind the nail salon. We then did some other surveys as well out by the car barn as well, and they were non-detect. I didn't bother highlighting them here because we had a look at the car barn. We didn't find any elevated levels there. So we excavated a hydrovac trench, which is basically a very strong pressure washer that excavates the soil while we vacuum it out. And we're able to actually find the old buried casing of the Tate well, and we exposed that. And we also observed bubbling in the bottom of the trench, letting us know that we had a leaking well casing down there in the parking lot. Next slide, please. We then did excavation and demolition, looking for the source of gas, and to explain the high levels of high gas levels that we found below the Wheatley slab. And some people wonder why this took a long time. Well, we retained an expert demolition firm, and they came in and they were able to forensically take everything apart. We had to take out the entire Pogue basement structure. Then we cut up the Wheatley slab and removed that with a scissor lift and everything, with giant, big forceps basically on a crane. So when we pulled that back, we actually found a caisson, which is basically a cement cylinder stacked up, and inside it was a 2-inch pipe that was bubbling gas. Okay, under the Wheatley slab, which correlated about 6 feet away with the shallow vapor probe where we had the high levels. So we interpreted this to be the source of gas from the previous emissions that were in the Pogue basement, and the reason is it's right next to the Pogue basement. When we excavated in the Pogue basement, we found a hole punched into the bottom of the caisson, and there was a clay drain connected in through the caisson, and that was the clay drain that was under the Pogue basement. So on top of the caisson there was a lid, and also there was a concrete slab poured under it. So we interpret what happened was when there was a gas emission that came up through the pipe, and it's continually emitting gas in those days, it had nowhere to go. It couldn't go up. There was a cap on top of the caisson. There was a poured slab on it. So it filled the caisson full of gas, and then it went sideways in the clay drain, and then it came up in the drain, and that's what filled the basement full of gas. Now, we weren't around to see that, right, at that time, but what we do have is we do have the caisson with the well in it emitting gas. We have the clay drain tapped into it, right? So it's a pretty conclusive evidence of what happened there. So that was our interpretation of the source of gas. Now I'll talk a little bit about where that gas came from now, because I know there's a lot of questions about it as well, and I'll talk and we can talk about it in the question period as well if you have. I'm just going to go over it briefly. The gas came from the shallow bedrock. That was that 2-inch pipe that I mentioned was a water well, or probably a historical water well, probably turn of the century, earlier 1900s. And essentially, the gas would migrate up from the bedrock, and there's high levels of gas in the bedrock, and then it would come up to surface. And we found high levels of gas when we drilled out the Tate well in the municipal parking lot as well. We drilled that out to 160 feet, and we found elevated gas levels in the bedrock aquifer to depth. And we have a monitoring well installed in the municipal parking lot as well, and we're having high gas levels in the parking lot as well. So we know that the gas migrated from the shallow bedrock up through the pipe to surface. Now we have a situation where this is what's called a thermogenic gas, and so it comes from depth. We've done a program that where we've been matching the gas levels and concentrations to samples that we took from other areas, and we know that it comes from it's a very close match with what's called the A2A1 carbonate reservoir down at a depth below 1,000 feet. So somehow the gas over a century migrated up through that well or multiple wells into the area, up into the shallow bedrock, up through the APEC 1 well to surface. Okay, so the next, please. So we confirmed that the APEC 2 well was a former gas well, and it did have some issues. We went back through all of the logs that the drillers made at the time that was abandoned in '65, all their handwritten notes and everything, and we saw they had some gas blowouts. It blew the cement out of the hole while they're trying to plug it. And we also, when we drilled it out, we found out the casing had holes in it and it was rotten down in the Blackwater zone. So in any case, that well was, we plugged it. We plugged that well with modern techniques and capped it at surface. So that well's plugged and done. The APEC 3 well up in the northwest corner of the parking lot, that turned out to be a shallow 62-foot deep well that was completed in a sand seam in the clay. And we drilled that well out, and Bradco did the well abandonment under the AWP program. And we plugged that one up to surface as well. So when we excavated that, we found it was a circular well tile about 6 feet in circumference and about a couple meters, 6 feet deep as well, with a cedar octagonal casing, and down into the clay. And so we pulled the casing out, we filled that hole full of cement, plugged it up and capped it. It's done. APEC 1, we found out that it was a water well, as I mentioned. We plugged it up with cement. And I'm saying it will be completed at surface with this steel cap, because right now we've plugged the well by displacement grouting, by pumping cement down inside the casing and up around the casing to surface. We chased that with a wiper plug on the inside of the casing as well. Bradco did that, and but we still have to come in, fill the inside of the casing full of cement, and then put a cap on it or bury it. We've done subsequent monitoring around all the wells, and we haven't detected any gas levels at surface. Yes? Sure. Sorry, thanks for the tip. Next, please. Is that a good level right there? Okay. So I mentioned the regional gas sampling program, and we're still in progress with that. We're doing that with Dr. Scott Mundell, who's an expert in these types of investigations for leaking gas wells. He's done a lot of that work in Ontario and out west, and we're because we're sampling right up until a couple of weeks ago. We're still rerunning the analysis and everything like that in order to finalize our comparisons, and so that work I'm hoping will be completed mid-fall. And Golder has a team of geochemists as well that are working on that with Dr. Mundell. So once we get that report, then we'll continue proceeding with the pathways analysis. So that'll help us determine the source of gas and the hydrogen sulfide levels, and from a geochemical standpoint. Next, please. So we now have the wells plugged, and the next step is to recommend future monitoring, and some mitigation as a contingency measure. So what we're recommending is ambient air monitoring program Continuing with what we have today with our portable gas meters out there. Then what we're recommending, a permanent monitoring system be installed, so we're not dealing with portable meters all the time, dealing with batteries running out, dealing with recalibration, but we'll transition to that. Right now we're just recommending continuing with the portable meters until we get the long-term monitoring system installed. That will require some procurement efforts on behalf of the municipality. Doing a subsurface groundwater and gas monitoring program. That is taking a look at the gas levels in that Golder monitoring well that I mentioned in the shallow bedrock and seeing if the levels are decreasing over time, looking at the trends there. There'll also be doing some water chemistry as well. And the mitigation that we're recommending and looking into right now is a pressure relief well. If there is a situation where the future gas emission were to occur, which we can't say that for sure that it wouldn't happen, right? We don't think it would because we don't have any any more pathways available at the site for the gas to come up because we've grouted them all. But if they were, we're planning on putting a backup pressure relief well in the parking lot. So if the gas were to come up, it would be focused on this vent. There would be scrubbers or flares or a containment system to contain the gas that would stop it coming up in other areas. So that would be a contingency measure should there be a future gas emission. Next, please. So in the summary, we successfully located, exposed, and plugged 3 wells. APEC 1, which is the water well and the interpreted pathway or conduit of gas from bedrock to surface that caused the explosion. APEC 2, a former gas well that we replugged in accordance with current standards. APEC 3, which was the shallow water well in the northwest corner of the parking lot, which we plugged and completed at surface with the steel cap. The plugging looks like it was done well effectively because we haven't had any gas detected at surface with our monitoring following the plugging, and we've recommended future monitoring and mitigation program that we provided to Chatham-Kent. So when I heard about the beginning of this talk and I heard about meaningful information and positive news, the positive news that I can bring to you today is our investigation is complete and the wells are successfully plugged. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. It's Ryan Brown, Acting General Manager of Infrastructure and Engineering Services. And I believe Amy's going to pull up a few slides. I have you from the municipal side of things. First slide, Amy. So building on Sean's presentation, once APEC 1, so Sean explained where we're at on that today, and there's a little bit of work to cap that well. Once that's completed, there's further work that must take place on the site. So the first thing is that the contractor has to demobilize from that APEC 1 site. And as you've probably seen in the area, there's a lot of equipment, the drill rigs and the tanks and all that have to be moved off site, which is going to take a little bit of time. Then we have to clean up a lot of the work that we did in the parking lot. So there's piles of gravel. We're going to remove what's left of the asphalt in the parking lot. There is some underground servicing that was partially removed during some of the excavations. So we have to do kind of all this cleanup work in the parking lot. And also as well, the safety equipment that is currently on site connected to all the emission points along the way is going to be all moved on to the municipal parking lot and connected to that monitoring well that Sean was speaking of. And so this safety equipment is going to take some time to get that piping in place and get that all hooked up on a temporary basis in the parking lot. So one of the things that can happen when the contractor has finally demobilized and we've moved that safety equipment over is that for those of you that are still in the evacuation zone but have structural orders from the building department on the buildings because of damage, those properties have not had an access visit yet. So at that point, when the contractor has demobilized, we will have an opportunity to start with appointments for those buildings. And so the first thing that has to happen, because these buildings have some damage noted by the chief building official, is you will have to have a structural assessment. And that typically occurs with your insurance company and a structural engineer. And so they're going to come in. And so how this will start is when we're ready, the chief building official will be reaching out to you directly to say, you know, we're ready for an appointment. Here's the details. Call this person and arrange an appointment. So we will be reaching out to you, and just recognize that there are quite a few of those properties on the west side of Erie Street North and on the east side and northeast corner. So there are a few buildings to work through, and those structural engineer assessments do take some time. So there may only be kind of one appointment per day per building because they may need multiple hours to do those assessments. Next slide, please. Concurrently, once the contractor is demobilized and we're arranging these appointments to get those structural assessments completed, one of the things that Golder and team are going to be helping us is to do what's called a pump test on that monitoring well. And that's really critical for our next step, which is reevaluating the evacuation zone. So they need to determine a flow of gas that they get out of that monitoring well if you constantly pump it. So that's a test we are going to be arranging concurrently with while those appointments are going on in the coming weeks. We also have to, as Sean said, we need to procure and implement longer term air monitoring. So the air monitors that are on site, as Sean explained, require battery changes and daily calibration. So there are more robust solutions out there that are hardwired and don't need that daily maintenance. So we need to procure those and get them installed in the right places with the advice of our engineers. What we're also going to be doing is we've started this work of cleaning up the library. Currently, Golder has a lot of that air monitoring equipment in the library, so we're going to be cleaning that up. We've been working with the library team to identify what kind of issues. We've been in the library a long time. There's some things that need some cleaning. There's fences to be moved, the site trailers out back. We are going to be doing all that work to try to get that library open for the community as soon as possible. And concurrently with that work as well, we've started some work. There's damaged sidewalks and getting new garbage receptacles on the street and banners and street sweeping. And there was a question that was posed to the group about the detour routes. So the Public Works team has been continuing to monitor those detour routes. I know they've been taking a heavy beating, and we'll continue to do that. But once we've moved on, the engineering department is well aware. And so they will be coming out to assess all those roads. And I know Klondike Road has been taking a lot of damage. And so once they assess that road, it will get ranked in priority with all the other roads in Chatham-Kent that we need to do some paving. And I expect it'll be moving up the list because of the damage that's been done to it through the detour. Those are my slides. I believe Chris Case has a few words he'd like to say.
Good evening, everybody. I want to thank the investigation team for bringing that good news to us tonight. We're delighted to hear that as well. I just want to provide some reassurance because there's still people out there who are still going to be concerned, they're still going to be frightened. I just want to provide some advice on what to do. So whenever work is taking place around the wells, the fire department will be there to provide that level of safety cover. That's what they're doing whenever work is taking place right now. At all other times, once the gas detection is in place, what Ryan Brown was talking about, should gas be detected, we will automatically be called. The fire department will show up, and the chief of Wheatley and the chiefs from Chatham will then begin to formulate a plan. So there will be plans formulated in case those gas detectors go off. But finally, I just want to send you the message. If anybody smells gas, call 911 right there. The crew will show up and they can immediately begin to see if they can find the source of the gas. We've been told that people have smelt gas and they've not wanted to bother us. We want to be bothered. So please, if you smell something, call us Let us come and find out what's going on. Let us deal with it. Let us provide that reassurance. And finally, I want to thank the community for the support they've given your firefighters. And I hope this brings some peace to the lives that you've been living. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Case. Amy, can we have the next slide? Thanks. So I don't have a lot to add to the conversation tonight, and I too am happy to hear some of the good news that we have heard. My team is the team that has been working with evacuated residents and trying to do whatever we can to assist people to get home as quickly as possible. We are working very closely with the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. They are at the table. We're in conversation with them pretty much weekly in terms of looking at maintaining accommodation costs and getting those things covered. And we'll continue to do that as we move forward over the coming months. On the screen are the numbers that I just wanted to remind people. Our case managers are available to assist our evacuated residents, to assist people as they transition back home. And we also have case managers that are at the Wheatley Resource Center on the dates shown up there. So on Mondays and Thursday afternoons. And they too are happy to help with anything that we can assist with. We do have access to some emergency funds. The province Ministry of Community, Children and Social Services has made sure that in the event of an emergency that we are able to assist for some items that they are willing to cover. All of that is done through our case managers. And so I still encourage people to connect with them. And they are that source that's there for you. Certainly, lots of you have called me. I'm happy to take those calls and certainly happy to assist any way that I can as well. And so my colleague Bruce is going to speak about some of the updates in terms of just our businesses. So I'll pass that over to him. Thanks.
Thank you, April. So our last point there over the past year, our economic development officers have been providing ongoing support to the various businesses that have been impacted here in Wheatley, and we certainly will continue to do so as we move forward here through the next stages. Certainly, I know many of you have spoken with Stuart McFadden, our Director of Economic Development, over the past year. He's online listening tonight, and I'll point out Matt Riome in the back corner here, as many of you had conversations with Matt from our Economic Development Office as well, and has been providing support as well. So one of the things, as most of you are aware, the province and the municipality did come to terms of a business support agreement in an extension of $3.9 million in addition to the original $2 million. That agreement has now expired as of August 31st, and we are currently in the process now of distributing those remaining funds to the various businesses that are still eligible and not open yet. That said, we are continuing to have conversations with the province to help them better understand what the needs of the remaining impacted businesses are going to be here as we move forward with the next stage and phases of this going forward. So maybe, Amy, I'll just go to the next slide and just kind of summarize the insurance questions again. I think these are messages that some of you may have seen, but if you have not yet, I'll just kind of reiterate. We have heard that there are some issues with residents and businesses with the decisions of their insurance company as they begin to do their structural analysis and have to recoup costs on the various buildings. So the first point here, and we have monthly meetings with the Insurance Bureau of Canada, both caseworkers from April's team and our Academic Development Office as well. They are very aware of the situation here in Wheatley, and they have advised if you are having insurance-related issues to call them at that specific number, or email them at that specific email address. They are monitoring that. It is on the top of the radar with regard to issues of insurance here in Wheatley. Second point, each insurance company does have an ombudsman who can help you get answers regarding insurance matters and complaints. You will find that contact information on the insurance company website. And then finally, the last thing we can advise at this point is if you may want to consider getting your own legal advice, from a lawyer regarding any insurance issues you may still be having. And I think that's all I have done, and I think we're back to you, if I believe.
Thank you, Bruce. So I'd like to do two things right now. The first is talk a little bit about ongoing communications. The municipal team and our provincial colleagues, some of who you can't see today because they're participating online, have been working for several months to provide ongoing support. Some of it's just been described in terms of financial support. There is a recognition that some folks have been unable to get into their properties to date. For example, the people that have properties in the evacuation zone. So we are trying to address some of those issues, but we don't have an announcement today. It is being considered, and I can assure you that we're all aware of that, and we're working towards providing some additional answers for you. But there have been a lot of people that understand the situation, and they're trying to address it. I also want to acknowledge that we have a lot of people that are not yet back in their properties, and based on the plans that they've been given by different contractors and so on, it may still be several months before they're able to get back into their homes and businesses. So tonight, although we've got some major announcements to make or some updates, we recognize this is far from over, and we're not going anywhere. We're going to be with you to try and provide that ongoing support until we can address some of those outstanding issues. So the first of those deals with communication. We have been doing check-ins with the community about what your expectations and needs are for ongoing updates. So the current situation is at least twice a week, we provide a written update to the community in terms of what's happening. For most of the last 3 or 4 weeks, you've gotten a fairly standard response that we're in the process of, as Sean described, investigating and looking at plugging APEC 1. Well, the feedback we're getting now is thanks, but we're almost like enough with that sort of an update because it hasn't been sort of changing or transitioning very quickly. We expect that when the work is finished on site, that there's going to be perhaps a need for less frequent updates because there's going to be less changes on a week-to-week basis. But this is sort of a check-in with you. We want to make sure that you're getting the answers to any questions you have, but we're also not just putting out a bulletin on an email or to the media unless there's something meaningful to talk about. So I want to share with you, some initial thoughts that we have and to check in to see if this is something that meets the community's needs. And we're prepared to continue to monitor that and to change so that your questions are answered and the communication you need is present. So what our current thoughts are is that we would continue to provide any significant updates to both the media and also our email distribution list that has, I think at last call, around 800 people on it. Any significant updates or changes, something like the APEC 1 well has now been fully capped or the equipment has been moved off site, something like that that's significant, we'd update you and provide you that update. But it may not be twice a week. It'll happen as it occurs. So that would be the type of thing we do. I'd expect that we'd probably be looking at something more on a once a week or every 2 week basis. The second piece is we still want to make sure that if you have a question, if you got a concern, we're still here to answer those questions. So it's not a question for us to say we're not trying to do the work, but we want to be responsive to what the community's needs are. So that same call, whether you're working through your caseworkers or our economic development team, or you're a general resident in the community, we still want you to contact the municipality and we'll make the commitment to get back to you quickly with a response. So that's what we're preparing to do. We're happy to receive feedback tonight or for you to write into us, but that's sort of where we're heading with the communication, and we'd love to hear from you if you think that's going to meet your needs or not. So I'm going to do a bit of a transition here before we open up the mics. We also asked the community for questions in advance of this meeting, And what I'd like to do is to share with you a summary of the questions that we received in advance and to give you an opportunity to hear answers to your questions. If you have additional questions, if we didn't capture what your intent was, then by all means, both the people present in the room with us tonight or the folks that are online, please feel free to add additional questions. We're not trying to not provide a fulsome answer. We think we've tried to capture what we did. In some cases, because there were several questions that were very similar, we've tried to do a little bit of combining of the questions. So let me just walk through those and acknowledge that with the hope that you'll clarify things if you need additional information. So the first question was, what caused the explosion? Nancy McDonald Duncan's summary of the Ontario Fire Marshal's Office addressed that. There was gas that leaked into the basement. There was an ignition source. That was the cause of the explosion. You've got some additional information from Sean McFarlane in terms of the pathway analysis, but that's the answer to that question. Question number 2 is, has the definitive source of the gas been identified? Again, Sean provided some additional information in terms of where the location of the gas is. All of that analysis, as Sean described, has not been completed yet. That final gas analysis will be coming back out, and we're expecting that Golder will have their final report, but that's not expected until probably mid-October to November. What is the risk of a reoccurrence? Again, Sean's addressed much of this, but we're following every recommendation with respect to what can be done to mitigate a future gas emission. And we have always been guided throughout this entire process as community safety has been the #1 guiding principle, and we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that the community is going to continue to be safe. So we believe we have not only taken the steps through with the support of the province to plug the wells, but we're also, as Sean's described, we're picking up the recommendations to look at additional contingency factors, monitoring the gas wells and surrounding area for at least 6 months. That'll be re-examined as we go forward. Also providing a venting stack with the possibility for flaring so that there is, again, a contingency with a low probability that it might occur, but we're making sure that we take some extra steps to ensure that the community is safeguarded. We had several questions around threshold of people's ability to smell H2S gas. So there's not a direct answer to that. I can tell you that we've done our, again, reconfirm with the research. You can smell hydrogen sulfide gas, that rotten egg smell, at a very, very low concentration, far lower than the concentrations that would be deemed to be harmful. The limit for safe working environment for H2S gas is 10 parts per million, and it's much, much less than that. And it's different for all of us depending on how acute our sense of smell is. Chief Case has provided the key information. We don't want to get into, trying to guess whether something's safe or not safe. Chief Case said it best: if you smell gas, please immediately phone the fire department. We will send a team of firefighters out every time we get a call, and we'll check to see what the levels of gas are. We've had a couple of situations where we've had it reported, a few days or even a couple of weeks after the fact that someone smelled gas and they didn't call it in. It's very difficult to do anything with that information. So we really need you to continue to support us by calling it in whenever there's that smell of gas, and we will go out every time to investigate. When will this be over? So this is the first time I'll honestly say we can't give you a definitive date to say when everything's completed. This has been an evolving situation. Depending on what Sean finds with this analysis, there might be a different course correction. We're going to continue to work to make sure that we do everything we need to do to ensure that things are safe. And if it takes a month longer than we originally planned, that's what it's going to be. We're going to make sure that that's the path that we're going to take. But with respect to when things are going to be over, we're expecting that the team from Golder, with the support of Bradco, are likely going to plug the wells sometime within the next few days or week. We're likely going to have a demobilization of the site. That's going to take several days, up to maybe a couple of weeks. And then there's going to be some of the work that Ryan described that could take a few weeks as well. I think Ryan described to you, we're going to try and do as many things concurrently as we can to shorten the time frame, but I can't sit here today and tell you a definitive date. You should know that, as we've promised already, we're going to continue to be on the site with the gas monitoring and so on for at least 6 months. So that's going to continue on. So I want the message to come through is that we're not going anywhere. This is not over yet, although we're making some big progress forward as a result of some of today's announcements. Why is the province taking so long to complete the work? I think both Jennifer and Sean spoke to that. There's a lot of people that have sat back and said, gosh, you should have been done, much more quickly. When you listen to Sean at length about the amount of work that had to be done, they've been extraordinarily thorough, but it's been driven by the requirement for safety, and this occurring in a very, urban populated environment. So that's something we're going to continue to deal with, but it's taken as long as it's taken, but we've always erred on the side of making sure community safety is a priority. I apologize. Thank you for the correction. Who will be certifying that the gas is safe? An important question. Thank you. So I'm going to tell you that no one's going to stand up here and confirm that things can be 100% safe. I've been saying something very similar to that for at least the last year. There are gas deposits throughout southwestern Ontario. They go into Lake Erie. We have people in our community that are living on the shoreline. I can't guarantee them that they're not going to get flooded out. There are certain risks that people have within our community. What I can tell you is that we have acted on every single recommendation that's taken place by the expert consultants. Sean and our provincial colleagues, Teresa Watson's been engaged for several months to provide us expert safety advice. We're taking every step that we can to reduce the probability of any sort of reoccurrence. As Sean said, we've taken steps to plug the wells. We believe it's safe, and we've taken the additional contingency plans to do the gas monitoring for at least another 6 months, and also to do the additional pieces like the flare stack. So we're pretty confident when we're saying we're moving forward, and we're taking all the steps that are possible in that regard. And the position we're in today, though, was I can't stand up here, and I don't think anybody's going to stand up and say everything's 100% safe. That's a level of assurance we cannot provide. I think we're on to number 8. Progress of funding. Spoken that. People were asking questions about the progress of funding for capping orphan wells. Again, a tip of the hat to the provincial government. They stepped up and came in to provide their abandoned works program to cap the 3 existing wells. I also want to acknowledge that the provincial government has been writing to the federal government, as has our local federal member of parliament, Dave Epp, to solicit additional funding from the federal government to deal with this issue. There have been a pot of money, several $100 million, to address this issue, but all that money so far has gone to the 3 western provinces. So we're trying to get money back in Ontario because this is obviously a concern here as well. Will there be additional financial assistance from the provincial municipal governments for reimbursement of expenses that are not covered by insurance? So this has got a number of different facets to it. Our first step is that the financial assistance that has been provided over the past several months, that has been meant to address extraordinary expenses and also emergency needs of the community. And in many cases, the province has stepped up and provided extraordinary funding that was not in place before this event. They've created funding programs to help us out. So just an acknowledgement, that's an extraordinary level of support. But when we start getting into what's not covered by insurance, that's a difficult question. Just because an insurance company has said that something's not covered, that's a position that an insurance company may have taken. And I can tell you that we've heard from a number of residents, some people have had very, very positive experiences and support from the insurers. Others have found that their insurance company has denied coverages and they've said, we're not going there. So in those cases, as Bruce had pointed out in his slide, what we're recommending is that people contact the insurance company's ombudsman or the Insurance Bureau of Canada. I can say that we've been saying that message for several months. And to the best of my knowledge, there's been fewer than 20 residents that have actually contacted the Insurance Bureau of Canada. So this is one where people really do need to do some advocacy. We have taken that on as well, but residents have a personal contract with their insurer, and we're not in a position where we can get between you and your insurance agent or your insurance company. That's something that you do have to take some responsibility for. The other piece that Bruce had mentioned on his slide is we're asking people to consider getting legal advice. You need to protect yourselves as well. Talk to a lawyer and make sure that if you're not satisfied with the response you're getting, that you understand fully what your options are. So that's the best advice we can provide you with that. Will there be consideration for compensation of stolen items? There's a number of issues here that are the same. Insurance will not cover paying out without another deductible. Again, that's a decision by some of the insurance companies, perhaps not all. I think that's an issue that would have the same answer as the last question. You need to work through your insurance companies, ombudsman, and so on. It's a single event, and for them to claim it's a double event is something maybe I don't think you should be satisfied with. Will security services continue on the site? I've spoken with Gary Conn, our police chief. He has assured us that there are no plans to change the security levels. Security staff and police services coverage will continue until further notice. As we go through the next couple of weeks of transition, Chief Conn and his team will reevaluate security requirements. We will not change the level of security without communicating that to the public, so you have a chance to consider your own options or needs. People have suggested things like security cameras in addition to the surveillance of the security companies and police. That's all being considered, but we're not anticipating providing private homeowners with security cameras. That would be something you'd have to consider yourself, but there might be a role that we could do that for community-wide services like have been done in other parts of the community. What's going to happen to the rest of the land and buildings in the evacuation zone? As soon as it's safe to do so, we'll transfer those buildings or the land properties back to the community. Ryan's talked about that already as part of his discussion. The redevelopment of the affected properties are going to be considered after we've received Golder's final recommendations. There may be some issues. For example, if there's gas monitoring where, you know, our property owner that has a hotel or a business may not want to put a resident directly on top of where we had gas emissions. That may be, you know, that would be prudent to wait some time. We can't make our final decisions until we receive the final decisions from the report. But what we're planning to do is transfer back as many of those properties as possible. We're expecting that the evacuation zone will be reduced unless there's other gas emissions identified, and that'll be communicated to you over the coming weeks. But our intent is let's get everybody back on their properties as soon as we can. With respect to the reopening of the downtown buildings, Ryan's talked about the library. That's hopefully going to be open very shortly. Businesses across the community have been opening. We've had many businesses. Oh, thank you for the QQ. I'm going to keep watching you, sir. You've been very helpful. Many businesses have already reopened. With respect to the businesses that have not, some are having a challenge just getting contractors to come in and do the work, to do the mitigation stuff or the work that is required. So we can't give you a definitive answer, but it's been great to see, like RBC's been reopened. We've got a number of other community groups that are, you know, announcing their reopening. And we're going to do everything we can to continue to support those people. And thanks again to the provincial government and the support they've been providing our businesses, because that's allowed people to stay afloat, to stay in a position where they could be considering reopening. So we'll continue to work through that. What is the municipality doing to help businesses reopen? A number of the financial programs that Bruce has spoken to. All of the people that have had businesses that are in the affected area have been contacted and have had regular communications, primarily with Matt Riom, who's sitting in the meeting with us this evening. And so we believe that business owners, if you have any questions, please contact Economic Development. We'll work with you on providing additional support. We're getting near the end. Thanks for being patient. What's the new proposal about the development in South Wheatley? Bruce has provided some additional update. There was plans to do a secondary plan for the development of Wheatley. We still believe Wheatley is going to continue to be a popular place for people to locate to. There is a public meeting that's been planned for the 27th of September from 6 until 8 p.m. This information will be on our municipal website, Let's Talk CK. But for those of you who are here, you can see that there's a website address already. And that's an opportunity to help guide the future growth of Wheatley, because Wheatley was identified in our census as the fastest growing urban center in Chatham-Kent, and we believe that that's going to continue. We just want to make sure that it's well guided with these plans, and we're looking for your input. When will the town be more accessible? So the southeast corner of Erie and Talbot are open, but still fenced, not workable. So this really goes back to the information that Ryan provided. We'll reevaluate the evacuation zone, the size of it, and as soon as we can open up additional space, we will do so. There may still be some spaces that are going to be fenced off if we're doing the monitoring for some time. We'll try and get that information to you as soon as we've seen the results of the work that Sean and his team and the water pumping of the well. I missed the, thank you. Just missed the wording on that. Sorry, was there a question at the back or a comment? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time hearing. Can I ask you to come to the... I'm going to ask Ryan to see if he can answer the question.
Thank you. I believe you're referring to the fence on the southeast corner. So that fence is there, and that current location has been picked because of the contractor is working right there on the other side of the fence. So once that contractor's been demobilized, I agree with you. Exactly where that fence is not the evacuation zone on the street. So once that contractor demobilized, I would expect to see that fence be pulled back in so that sidewalk could be open. But once again, we also have to consult with the chief building official because of those buildings in there as well. Some of them have structural orders on them, and we don't want people right up against a building that hasn't been reviewed by a structural engineer. But point taken, and that is something we will look at here in the coming weeks. Does that help? No, I will definitely take that back, and perhaps afterwards, I have a map with me. We can have a look and chat about it. But I understand that fence is there. That contractor is working right on that site, and even if when the time comes until those buildings have been assessed, there may be a fence that takes up some of the sidewalk, so that someone's not walking right underneath the facade of one of those buildings.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you for the question. Number 17, I believe we've already addressed. Ryan went through details of what the next steps are and some timing regarding that. The last question is there an intention to improve the quality of the detour routes? Ryan's also spoken to that as part of his presentation. All the roads, the quality of the roads will be assessed, or they are being assessed now with Public Works, and plans to make any road improvements will be considered as part of that analysis. Lauren, we're going to open up the floor to questions right now, and I'm going to ask if you have a question, if you can come to the mic, please. So we've got people online. If you talk from the back, they can't hear you. So thank you very much for your patience. We're going to be opening up the microphone. Thank you. Opening up the microphone now, and we'd ask people to line up along the side if you have a question, and we'll be happy to do our best to answer those. Thank you for being our first speaker.
Hello, everyone. My question related to the timeline once everything's done and the SBO comes in to look at these buildings. I don't think that it's acceptable to only do one building a day. Like, you know exactly how many buildings are going to need to be assessed. We need to get more people in, get every insurance company lined up when you know that date, and every building should be looked at that day. Like, I think that's too long of time to say one a day, and there's probably 6 or 7 buildings and houses that are going to need to be looked at.
Thank you for the question. Point taken. That is so currently those properties are in the evacuation zone, and that's something I will take back with the fire department and those on site to consider. Because it's still in the evacuation zone, we will be checking people in we want to keep tabs on people on site so that if something happened in the evacuation zone, we can get them out immediately. And with that air monitoring, it gets complicated to have more and more people in the zone, but point taken. And even if there's, multiple appointments that the fire department would consider that, happy to look into that. And also remember, like I said, we're going to be doing this work concurrently. And so if that review of the evacuation zone can be completed, the evacuation zone may be reconsidered before those assessments are even done, right? So then once they're out of the zone, they'd be open to do those anytime they'd like. But thank you for the question. I'll take that back.
Thank you. Please, questions, please, Stephanie, or? Thank you.
Into the mic. Good. I have to get on my toes. Oh,
Welcome to my world.
see, now I feel like a dummy. Anyways, hi. Before I get started with my question, I just want to let you all know you've said a lot of stuff tonight and you acknowledged a lot of stuff, but from my own words, I want you to know that I stand before you today a defeated person. There's a lot of great news that came out here today. I can't be happy about it. I emotionally cannot get myself there because my life hasn't changed. The latest update we've had is that work cannot start on our house until January or February. So this is great, but I can't be happy about it. My world is still upside down. My family's world is still upside down. My two very small children are upside down. My 2-year-old calls our house the big boom house because she cannot understand why we're not there, why we can drive past it, but we're not there. So I'm sharing this with you in hope that in all things you do and all things you say, you remember that first. I'm not the only one who feels upside down and defeated. And with that in mind, I want to ask the question about funding. I know there was political jargon that sidestepped the question. I get that there's no direct answer right now, but I do need more information. Work cannot start on my home until January or February. My mortgage hasn't stopped. Our utilities, as they come on, I'm paying for them again in 2 locations. My yard is a jungle. We need support and we need funding, and it is not enough to tell us to fight more and more with our insurance companies and take that burden on us. We need help, and telling us to go and do the work is not sufficient. We need more. I would like more information about funding continuing so that my family can focus on getting back to our lives and getting right side up again.
Thanks. You very eloquently and honestly talked about why we're all here and what's been driving the work since the explosion of people were displaced from their homes. So just say we acknowledge it. So let me try and clarify. There are 3 pieces that I just want to unpack. The piece about the insurance is there were several questions specifically about can we, I've got 2 great guys in the back there that are helping me. The questions about the insurance is, I'm not going to sit here and say that the government's going to do all things for all people. There are certain things that we believe are legitimately a claim for your insurance. And there has been at least one company that we've received multiple complaints or concerns being expressed that they've not stepped up the way the other insurers are. That's the piece that we're talking about on that side, and we're encouraging people to take that avenue. The piece about the additional support from the provincial government for both residents and business owners. The concerns that you've just expressed about not being able to get back into your home or having the work start for several months, that has been communicated to the people that are providing support through the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing. Helen's on the line. I'm going to maybe check and see if she'd like to speak to this. And also from MedCat, who's the Economic Development Ministry, who's been providing support to the businesses. They are aware that there's been delays. Some of the business owners haven't even been getting into their properties because it's in the evacuation zone. So they're aware of that. They've been trying to work through that and to see what adjustments or additional support they can consider, but they're not in a position to say anything today. They don't have any approvals for that. So that's their concern, but they're aware of it. And they've been aware of that for a few weeks. They've been trying to work through and see what can be provided to address the concerns that you've just expressed. But they are two different issues. One is the insurance that's legitimately a concern. The other is waiting for some additional support, but we do recognize that. I'm just wondering whether, Jennifer, you'd like to say anything, and maybe Helen.
So one of my colleagues from the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is online. She just got cut off there, so she's just trying to log back in. But what I can tell you, and really appreciate the comments and the questions, and I think it's good reminders for all of us. I will say that, you know, as a group, many of us are meeting weekly, some of us daily on this topic. The municipality does a fantastic job of those sentiments that you just shared in terms of how difficult it is, you know, how your life's been turned upside down. Every time we meet with April, those are exactly the same things she shares with us. So the message has continued to be reiterated, and it's really helpful to hear it from you as well. In terms of the funding program, so my colleagues have shared some information with me, and what we know right now is that the existing program through that ministry, particularly around the housing supports, currently goes till December 31st, 2022. They continue to, you know, as we get more information about the timelines, they continue to understand that information, and they're working now in terms of what do the needs look like beyond that time frame. So I don't have anything to share with you specifically tonight, but I think everybody's well aware that, you know, we are looking now into 2023, and we'll have to consider what makes sense and what you need to best support your family moving forward.
Thank you, Jennifer.
Hello. So I'm still evacuated. And my house is not the big boom house. My house is the poop house. I got that, but it's okay. Yeah, can't understand why she can't come to Aunt Becky's house, and that's why. Anyway, about the ombudsman or whatever it's called, the insurance ombudsman. I contacted your ombudsman, and I said my concerns. And one of my concerns was, why did we not get into our home we didn't get access till December the 2nd, okay? And she said to me, I have a long, lengthy letter, and it said, because you didn't hand your keys in, you know, there was a process that you had to follow, and you didn't hand your keys in. I said, and I know Susan Fulmer can vouch. I was one of the first, like probably the first two. I called my husband and said, get our keys there, and he did right away. We followed protocol. We did everything we could because we knew we had to save several things in our house before it was too late. Because we were already our first visit with firemen, and it was coming up, sewage. So, you know, we contacted the ombudsman, and it all turned back on me, on us. And, you know, now we're having trouble with insurance. They opened our pool last week. Isn't that great? It's closing season. They opened our pool because that was affected by the explosion. Now they want to do some stuff to our garage. That was because of the explosion. And I said, what about the house? Well, that was because Chatham-Kent shut your hydro off. It's their fault. We lost everything we owned, everything, and the house. And it's sitting there still rotting because all we got gutted was the basement. Like, nobody cares. Like, it's awful. And, you know, I wish maybe the adjusters would have came out today, or my adjuster. He doesn't care. He's He's been gone for 3 weeks on vacation. So it's just we're lost. Like for us people, like we're just, you know, I appreciate, you know, the getting things back, and that's amazing. But you know, it's here. We're lost. So and you're about ombudsman. He like they were not like I could send you the letter. It was my fault. This whole thing was my fault. I didn't hand my keys in. I didn't do this. I didn't do that. And I'm like, what? So whoever they spoke to took no responsibility that we screwed up. We let an insurance company in first. He worked for weeks at a time on homes. He screwed me or us. So
Thank you. So let me do two different parts of that. The first is if you've got some additional information that you've got from our ombudsman, the municipal ombudsman, then I'm going to ask if you can work with April's team we'll bring that information back and do a review. If you've been given information which is incorrect or you've shared information, then let's make sure that that's reviewed so that we're at least treating you fairly and you've got the right documentation. I think that's number one. So with respect to the broader question, we did receive some questions or concerns about people expressing concern they couldn't get in soon enough to do a winterization of their home, or why was the hydro cut off. Jim Hogan from our local utility Integris is here, and he can talk to some of the hydro issues. But the short message is we reduced or shut off the hydro when there was a threat to the community, when there was a threat of an explosion. And, you know, so there's been lots of second guessing that, but that was the reason for that.
okay, so moving forward, can we get like if this ever happened again, can we get like one like I talked to a guy one time at my work and he said one grid of hydro could have prevented like I don't know much about hydro, but they said if you would have got one grid down your road of hydro, you wouldn't have lost your sump pump would have been plugged in and we wouldn't have lost everything. And my neighbors too. I don't know if that's true.
So I'm Jim Hogan at Integris, so I'll do my best to answer the question. When we design our distribution system, safety is the utmost priority. Safety for our employees, the customers, and the community. And then we look at providing the best service, and that would be reliability and power quality. So, and what we can do many times is we can what we call segment the area, such that if there's a problem, we will minimize the number of customers that are impacted from that problem. So you'd have fewer customers as possible. So that's very important to us. And here in this case, with Wheatley, the only customers that did not have electricity were customers that were inside of the evacuation zone. All other customers had electricity, but because of the risk and because of it being an emergency situation, all those inside had to be disconnected. Exactly what the individual's talking for you, it kind of sounds like he thinks that we could have provided some electricity to your home, but not full power. I don't know what that is. So it's either you're in an evacuation area, it's high risk, you have to be cut off. So I'll take it back to our team, look at that, but I don't know what that is. It's either you're on or not. And that's where, as I say, we designed the system to take care of as many scenarios of emergencies, and we will also, and what we did in this case, we went out and did some one-off, some selective work to make sure that those that were not in the evacuation zone had power. So we did that as best we could. You may have taken us a little bit of time, but it's It was a risky situation, so we had to work as safe as possible. But we do those as kind of the one-offs. When we have these situations, we can go out and do some of that work manually because you don't really know really where the emergencies will be. So you can't design a system that way. We do as much as we possibly can in order to minimize the manual work we'll do, but sometimes you still have to do that, and that's what we did in this case.
April is going to follow up with you. We have a couple of other specific suggestions. I know you've worked with her in the past. Next speaker, question, please.
How are we doing tonight? Morris Rafful here. I own the property in 19 Erie Street North, former MJ's Pizza, the laundromat. Two quick questions. Number one, there's a lot of equipment on my property. I'm not asking for a timeline. What I need to know is, will everything be removed? I got pipes coming up and down, and I know they asked me permission a long time ago. It's been, I think, 8 months ago to use my property, and I have no problem. It's got to be fixed, so use it. Will anything remain there?
Thank you for the question, and the answer is no. We will remove everything from your property, and that's so in this interim phase to talk about the monitoring for the next 6 months, we're getting all that equipment on our municipal parking lot property out back. So all those, current pipes and equipment, and thank you for the access you've allowed us. We will be removing that all over the coming days.
Okay, that was the easy question. Now here's the hard one. We've got a situation downtown where we've got a shitload of buildings, excuse my language, and it gets very frustrating seeing all my friends there. My building's gone. Okay, my insurance company, with all due respect, were fantastic with me. I've got absolutely no complaints, and we're just sitting back right now waiting. I got a lot of friends with buildings. People like Barry, the car barn, we've been together there for 36 years. We've been there for a very long time. What insurance company is going to walk in and insure him when he reopens, or if I reopen? What insurance company is going to come back in and give us insurance on that property? Has anybody looked into anything like that? Okay, we're looking at structural now. We're looking at personal, but now we got to look at business. We're businessmen. We cannot run a business without insurance. There is no way any insurance company is going to walk in there right now and give us basically the rates we had. They're probably going to be 5 to 10 times higher if they even come in. Could you please address that?
Thanks. I don't have a clear question or a clear answer for you. I'm not going to pretend that we do. We've had over the course of the, I'd say the last 2 months, we've had a couple of business owners come back to the municipality and report that their insurance company the insurance company has said that they're not prepared to renew their policy. The commitment I can make is that we will take that on as an issue that has to be considered. We have not done a fulsome response. Sorry, not a fulsome response, but we haven't done that investigation yet. So I can't sit here and pretend that we've done anything different than that. But that'll be one of the things that the team listening today can acknowledge, and we'll work with Matt to make sure that those issues are brought back from the business owners, and we'll consider how we can provide support, what support can be done by the municipality. But I don't have a...
I really don't think there's much support.
I don't have an answer for you today. Right, yeah. Thanks.
That's going to be the hard part for the business.
Yeah.
You can always put a building back up, but if you can't get somebody insured, you're not running your business.
Understood.
Hi, I'm Mike Hunch from the pharmacy. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I got angry. I don't think I learned anything today, other than someone admitted, oh, we're looking into 2023. Maybe I was sitting in the back and I didn't see the timeline. I seen the things that need to be done. I didn't see 1 to 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks. I didn't see any of that. We have no timeline other than 2023. You guys are missing the human impact. You've totally glossed over it, didn't address it. One of the now the question that I had that was totally glossed over was the threshold of detection of the gas, and you put a ridiculous 10 parts per million. What was given to us in the emails were it wasn't higher than 2 parts per billion, and it was repeated per billion. Can a human smell 2 parts per billion H2S? No, they can't. So it was somewhat higher than that, than what was reported. So then you've lost credibility. So you've lost trust, and you've lost any desire to address the human impact of this. Because you guys are going to go home to Chatham or wherever, and tomorrow we're going to be, back at work, or in 10 minutes we're going to be at our houses, and you've lost the total impact. So I don't know what to say, but the threshold of impact or of detection was totally glossed over. No timeline. There was no evacuation. Not everyone was evacuated. You keep saying it, and it bothers me. There's 20 people that were injured. How did they get injured? They were in that impact zone. It wasn't a complete evacuation. You keep saying that. The people just north of me, they were still living in their house. They had a kid in front of a window. The people at Subway, it was not, there were some people evacuated, but don't say it was evacuated. And insurance issues, yeah, get a lawyer. And the hydro was turned off, to Becky and all these other people. But the hydro wasn't turned off at 15 Talbot Street North that day, and it should have been. Now, I don't know what you said. It was an ignition thing. What kind of ignition source was it? I didn't hear that. Maybe I was sitting in the back and I didn't hear you guys saying what the ignition source was. So I guess that's my question.
So the ignition source was one or all of the appliances that were located in the basement at the time, which included fans, dehumidifiers, the electric hot water tank, electrical branch circuitry, a blower motor for the natural gas furnace, and the central air unit. So there were several appliances that were a competent ignition source. The gas could have hit one or all at the same time. At that time. You're
So to answer your question, sir, we get a call to hydrogen sulfide. The gas is toxic as well as explosive. So the firefighters show up on scene and immediately request Integris and hazardous materials technicians who are qualified to work within that gas. We will not send Integris into a gas cloud to isolate the hydro. The crew began to evacuate, and they were still evacuating when the explosion took place. All efforts were made to do as much evacuation as possible. That's what was going on when the explosion took place. I wouldn't say it wasn't entirely done, sir, because the firefighters were evacuating when the explosion took place. They were in the risk zone alongside the people who were injured. And may I say, firefighters were also injured whilst they were trying to get the people out.
Howard, next question, please.
Hi there, Howard Gabert. I'm with Wheatley Task Force. Our mandate is long-term recovery of the town. One of the the primary thing that we always hear is that people want to be assured that the town is going to be safe. Businesses and residents to come back in when this is done. Oh, sorry, am I not? I got to lean in instead of standing back. Okay, is that better? Okay, let me start over. So Howard Gabert, Wheatley Task Force, we're trying to reassure businesses and residents that the town is going to be safe to return to, especially the evacuation zone. One thing that I heard tonight is a little bit concerning around the concept of the safety. So when Sean gave his recommendations, there was three things that he mentioned that Golder is going to be recommending in the final report: a permanent air monitoring system, a subsurface gas and groundwater monitoring system, and the installation of a pressure relief well with a flare. Of those, the only thing that I heard spoken to of those three that Ryan spoke to was 6 months of the air monitoring. I didn't hear any comments to the other two recommendations about the subsurface gas and groundwater monitoring and the installation of the pressure relief well. Is that still under consideration, or have we determined that of those three, we're only going to do 6 months worth of the air monitoring? So looking for some feedback on long-term safety around those Golder recommendations.
Hi, Sean here. So I've spoken with Chatham-Kent, and they plan to go ahead with all three. We're currently putting a plan together for the subsurface monitoring, and that takes some thinking because we're going to have to do that on air supply. We're going to have HSE there for health and safety as a backup, but we're planning to do that for at least 6 months. And CK said we do that. The more complicated thing that we need to think about is the flare system. So a couple things that we didn't talk to you about yet, and that is when we were plugging up APEC 1, we were concerned that we would have cement grout invasion into the Golder monitoring well, so it would no longer function as a gas vent. So we put a backup relief casing in the ground, so we could simply re-enter that steel casing. It's at the top of rock, and drill a quick bedrock vent in a matter of hours because we have the equipment on the site. So we're hoping to use that steel casing that we already have installed for the gas vent. We're going to have to find a reliable supplier that can do what we need. I'm thinking that if we can get scrubbers on there and lower the point source emission, we can shrink the evacuation zone as small as possible. And if we have also a flare on it, we have the best of both worlds. It can handle a big gas emission. So we're looking to that now. I've identified a good supplier, and we're going to have to get them on site to do the testing in order to design the system. We've had pre-consultation meetings with the MECP as well about this, about the design. And so we're planning to move forward there. It would require an ECA, it would require a permit, environmental permit for that, and dispersion modeling. So the CK has told us that we have a approval for like putting a proposal together for that, and we're still in the process of that right now.
And so that will be, I guess this is more a CK type of question. Is the intent that this is going to be, I guess, a permanent installation and be funded beyond the 6 months, or is just the 6 month versus permanent is, I think, the concern here that I'm trying to clarify.
I think there were two parts. There was some things that had at least a 6 month time horizon for the monitoring. And then I think there was also some recommendations regarding permanent gas monitoring that would extend in perpetuity. So those are the two pieces. And the municipality is looking at all of those recommendations. So we're just waiting for the final proposal. I can't sit here today and say it's been approved, but we've been listening to Sean and his team from Golder and taking their recommendations. I have every expectation that those would consider to be by the municipality and be supported. So we want to do everything we can as we committed to make sure the community is going to continue to be safe in the future as well.
Okay, and thank you for that. The follow-up question here is, I'm gonna start with Sean here. So in different jurisdictions in Canada, there's setback distances that are regulated for how close you can reoccupy buildings to a petroleum well. In your view as a professional engineer, are these buildings safe to reoccupy, considering we would potentially have a flare stack and other sources of gas that have previously leaked? Are these buildings truly safe to reoccupy?
So what we need to look at there, and we will have we'll have to get a permit for that. We're going to have to do, as I mentioned, air dispersion modeling to see if we can actually fit it in the parking lot and be that close and that to the buildings around there. If not, then we would have to move the vent somewhere else, perhaps in the public works yard, but some other area. So we're going to see if we can actually fit it in the parking lot and get approval for that. And that's going to depend on the design and the analysis of the emissions.
And then, but bearing that in mind, you've got occupied buildings within, 50, 80 feet of that. Is that truly a safe situation to have for businesses and residents to be that close to this type of industrial activity?
Yeah. So we plugged the wells, okay, and now the next phase, we're just finishing plugging the wells, and the next stage is that assessment. So I don't have that answer today. That's something that we're looking at. We haven't even got a design together or analysis on the flare stack. So we're going to see every situation's different, right? Because it depends on the concentration, the flow rate, and everything like that. So we're going to work with the flare design company and work with the engineers and the air modelers and everything to come up with that and work with the MDCP. Right now, we haven't designed the flare, so we don't have an answer to your question. That's what we're going to look at, though.
Okay. The final report will have more details on
Yeah, that'll be different. Where our report will, for the pathways analysis, is going to end, right, with our recommendations to CK. CK for the MNRF, because right now we're retained by the MNRF. Will be retained by CK as part of the transition plan to do the subsurface ambient air monitoring and also the flare stack, coordinate the flare stack design, recognizing that that will involve also procurement of a suitable company. We've identified a suitable company that has a lot of experience out in Alberta, but also here in Ontario, and some of the people on the site have worked with them. So we have a good, and we've initiated the contact with them, and we think they need to come down and do some flow rate measurements to help us with the design.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
Next question, please.
I just wondering.
Could you get a little closer, please?
Just wondering about the owners of residential rental building. We had tenants who can't get them back in, they evacuated, but there is no financial assistance for us at all in all those 3 steps. And I mean, it's considered, it's like a business as well. You have a property, you rented it, and you don't have no income, and there's no assistance. Just wondering how come it's not there yet, or if it's gonna come. That's one. But the second thing is, my tenants are evacuated. I can't get them in back because the insurance company are not insuring my building. They consider it unsafe in Wheatley, and they're asking me, can you get a letter from Wheatley or municipality to tell you that it's safe? We can't get you insurance, so they decline insurance. They will not renew it. Besides all the issues that I'm working with the insurance, and they're denying all of it because it's not their fault. It's evacuation. There's no coverage, and so on. So those 2 questions, wondering if it's been addressed somehow, or anyone has worked on it, or if anybody is like my situation. I'm not sure how many. Thank you.
So thank you. My understanding is that there is an option for lost income from property insurance that is available through some insurers. Because that is an insurable expense, I think that was a primary reason it was not considered as a lost income. So I recognize there's a gap there, and I understand that that causes landlords hardship. But all of the discussions we've had to date, there has not been a consideration to provide compensation for lost rental income. and that was the reason I understood. The second question about the lack of insurance, that's been discussed once previously tonight. I think the answer towards that is going to be a combination of advocacy to the insurance companies and possibly considering some consultation with legal staff or lawyers to see what is available to us. My understanding is an insurance company has the right to refuse to renew a policy. That there's some options there. Whether we can apply some pressure, political and otherwise, to try and get them to reconsider that position. If we can demonstrate that we've taken all the steps that Sean described tonight to make the community safe, that might be something that provides the type of assurance that they're looking for. But I can't stand here today and say that that's taken place.
Is there any letter available to take? Because even like the new insurance broker, when we ask them to shop, that's the question. Do you have anything to prove that area is safe? You can't get your insurance from any other insurance, and they're brokers. If there isn't.
Right. I will ask that Bruce and his team that are dealing with support to the businesses takes that away. We'll look at trying to provide some additional consultation, and we'll see what avenues might be available to us on that front. As I said tonight, I don't think anyone's ever going to be able to stand up and say it's 100% safe. But to be frank, insurance companies know that better than any of us. They insure against risk. So it's a question of, what's the level of risk and can they offer that support. So I'll ask Bruce to take that one away, and we'll follow up and see if we can get back to you. If we can make sure that Bruce has your contact coordinates before you leave, or Matt does, we'll make sure that we follow up with you. Thank you. I think we have one more question. I know that we're getting close.
So we still have a little bit of time. We have several people that are watching from home, so I just want to interject 2 questions, and then we can come back to those in the room. So Speed City, I think this might be a question for you, Ryan. Which buildings are slated for demolition, and when will this happen?
Yeah, I'll actually hand it over to Bruce, who oversees the Chief Building Official's office, who could best answer that question.
Yes, thank you. At this point, no buildings are slated for demolition. There's been several property owners who did receive a letter back in, I think it was May, from our Chief Building Official, Paul Lucina, advising that once the evacuation order is lifted, you would be receiving a formal order under the building code to remedy an unsafe building. So in layman's term, that means at minimum, you have to retain a structural engineer to go in and review the condition of the building and have them make a determination on essentially, is it repairable? They'll make a recommendation, or should it be demolished? And that's really how it will move forward from here on in. It'll be a decision of the insurance company as well.
And another question, one from Heidi. Why is there no compensation for people that have lost their homes? Don?
So we did address that a little bit earlier in this evening. Neither a municipality or provincial government is in the business of insuring property owners for that type of loss. That's why you have insurance. So while the municipality and the provincial government have stepped up and provided a variety of different types of financial support, the reason it has not been offered is because that's why you have insurance, is to have that type of coverage should there be a catastrophic event that destroys the home. So it's that's the direct answer to the question.
When you enter Wheatley, coming from the north side of town, coming from Tilbury, you will pass a great big sign that says all trucks must turn here. Coming into Wheatley from Leamington, there's no such sign. The sign is very small. If you're not looking, it does not look anything like a road sign. It just looks like an information sign that's saying trucks must use County Road 35. I think it is. Thank you, 37. Consequently, there are numerous semis going through our little town on a daily basis. I live where the sign is. The sign now has fallen down in windstorms. I don't know who to contact to get it put. It needs new bags. But right now, school is started. Schools are funded for buses. Students can get on a bus if they live 1.6 kilometers away from the school or 1 kilometer if they're in kindergarten. The way the route is now, kids cannot walk to school safely. So I did hear you say you're looking at the roads. That route needs to be looked at immediately. There's areas that there's no sidewalks. The potholes along the sides of the road, it's not meant for trucks. It's really not meant for two people passing each other. We have a hardware store that is lucky enough to be open, and thank goodness it is. But the way the parking goes onto the road, it is also makes it unsafe for anybody to walk or ride a bike through our town. So if that can be looked at, that is a concern.
Thank you for the questions. There was a couple in there. One, who do I contact about these concerns? So you're a Chatham-Kent resident, I assume. Please call 311 if you're in Chatham-Kent. Exactly. And I was about to say that next, because we're right near Leamington and you might get that 311. So to contact the municipality of Chatham-Kent, 519-360-1998. And if you issue a complaint for a road, and tell the person you were at the Wheatley public meeting, because I'm happy to take a Leamington concern regarding that sign you just said. I have my colleagues in Leamington and with Essex County to contact them and coordinate that. So happy to take that question. And with regards to potholes, that is a Chatham-Kent concern. Call that in, and my team's listening tonight, and so they will go out and we will fix anything with that regard. Regarding adding sidewalks to a road, that's not an interim solution.
There's not room there to add extra sidewalks. So how about placing a sign at the United Church saying, which is in Chatham-Kent, whatever trucks they are, no turning for trucks at that road, so that they either can either travel to the Zion Side Road or travel to the Campbell Side Road, which I understand the Campbell Side Road is under construction as well. But at least it's not putting our kids and we're an aging community, so we do need to get out and walk. You've really turned off half the town from the other half of the town, and we are one community. So a sign at a church or at Featherston's on that corner would at least prevent the semis from making those turns.
Appreciate the comment, and we'll make a note of that and review.
Thanks. The other thing we will do is to go back and look at, to see if there's any reconsideration the school board could have with respect to the busing. Just if it's an unsafe route because of the detours or what's happening right now in Wheatley, we'll see if the school board can give some consideration to bending the rules on the 1.6 kilometer line. Ma'am, could I please ask you to use the microphone?
Hi, I'm not a Wheatley resident, Wheatley proper, but I am running as a candidate in this ward. And just as that young lady came up here, you told her that she should call 311. From a clarity perspective, does she have to go home and call 311? Or are you going to take that and do something with it? Because she's telling you now.
So there's two different issues. Ryan's taken the information already, and he said he's happy to look into it. But every time someone has a concern, whether it's a pothole or a down sign or anything along those lines, if you call the municipal office, the person that accepts the call immediately logs that as a request from a community member, and that's then forwarded to the department responsible for it. And there's also a tracking mechanism to make sure that the concern is addressed in a timely fashion. If it doesn't, it quickly gets elevated to the CAO's office, and he makes some calls to say, what's the delay in
And
getting
I
this done?
understand that.
So,
And I think she understands that for future. But you're here. These folks have been through hell and back. And I just suggest from a service perspective, the taxpayers' dollars are paying for those services. Take the message, go back and get it fixed.
Understood. Thank you.
And it shouldn't take weeks,
I think Ryan's already suggested he would
especially
take a lot
when
of that.
kids are involved.
Thank you very much. Are there any additional questions in the audience today? We want to make sure that if there are any questions that we make sure that we deal with those. One moment, please.
Sorry, Don. I have the luxury of having my computer up here, so I'm able to follow a bit of the chat online. I think the question earlier about the lost homes, it wasn't quite reflected accurately based on how it's written online. And I was wondering, April, the person, Heidi, is asking the question, and I don't know, maybe you can follow up directly with her, or maybe you have a bit of an answer, but she was actually, she was a renter, and I think her home is gone, and she's struggling finding something in the same price range in terms of finding a rental. So I just wanted to make sure we didn't miss the intent of her question.
Thank you very much. April's made a note of that, and we will follow up directly with her. Thank you. Are there any other questions in the audience? Amy, is there anything else online? Okay. You know, a number of people have talked this evening, you know, in a similar vein to Stephanie. This is not something we're coming together tonight to celebrate. We recognize that we are not through this, and we recognize people are still out of their homes and their businesses. Many people are. It's been a slow process, but we're trying to, you know, provide you with updates. That was a commitment that we made last year, is to continue to provide you with updates as they become available. That was the intent of this evening. The other message, in addition to providing answers to questions, is to reassure people we're not going away. We're going to continue to be here simply because the work is going to be completed on site. We've talked tonight about a number of next steps to continue to do that. So I'd ask the group to continue to, you know, send the questions in, contact the people that you have as either caseworkers or the business owners through economic development, and we will make that ongoing commitment to get back to you, to provide you with support, to provide advocacy, and again, an acknowledgement that we are not walking this alone. The provincial government has had multiple ministries working over the course of the last, you know, since last August, providing additional support, and you are top of mind. This is something that I know you don't see the folks every day, but I want you to know that there is a host of people trying to provide additional support, and we're going to continue to try and do that until we can, you know, provide the support that's needed to the people in this community. So with that, I thank everybody very much for coming out this evening. Councillor Harrigan, did you want to make any final remarks? I don't want to put you on the spot. I just didn't want to close the meeting without. Thank you very much for coming out. There are a few people that I know have some additional questions that will be sticking around for a few minutes for the time that's been required. So thank you very much for coming out. For the people online, thank you for participating. We'll get through this together. Thanks.